Warning: what you're about to see is entirely your responsibility. These are real cases, documented, witnessed, and feared by those who lived through them. Some say that simply hearing these stories can invite something unseen into your life. Paranormal investigators, police officers, and even skeptics walked away from these cases forever changed. Some refused to speak of what they saw, others weren't so lucky. And you've already taken the first step just by being here. Now before we begin, take a moment, turn on a light, check behind you, and make sure you're really alone. Because once you hear these stories, you might start to notice things. A faint whisper when no one's there. A shadow that moves just a little too fast. A presence watching from the dark. If you're brave enough to continue, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and tell us in the comments, do you believe in the supernatural? Or are you willing to risk finding out? Take a deep breath. We're about to begin. 1. The San Pedro haunting, the nightmare of Jackie Hernandez. It began with the scent of decay. A sickly, cloying odor that clung to the walls of Jackie Hernandez's small home in San Pedro, California. At first, she dismissed it as old plumbing, but the disturbances escalated quickly. Objects moved on their own, whispering voices echoed from empty rooms, and a shadowy figure lurked in the corners of her vision. Desperate and terrified, Jackie reached out to paranormal investigator Barry Taff, hoping for answers. But what followed was beyond anything he had ever encountered. The night the investigators set up their equipment, the house turned violent. As the team stood in the attic, a thick, dark mist began to swirl around them, its form shifting as if alive. Then, without warning, one of them screamed. An invisible force wrapped a noose-like cord around his neck, hoisting him into the air. The other investigators watched in horror as he struggled, his face turning red. They barely managed to pull him down before he suffocated. Jackie's terror only deepened when she saw the apparition of a man with sunken eyes and rotting skin, staring at her from the shadows. Later research revealed a gruesome connection. A man had been murdered in that attic decades prior. Was his tormented spirit still lingering, seeking revenge? Even after Jackie fled the house, the entity followed her. Was it ever truly tied to the home, or had it attached itself to her? Would you dare step inside a house where something unseen has the power to strangle a grown man? Or do you believe some spirits refuse to let go, even in death? The chilling exorcism of Annalisa Michel, a possession beyond salvation. In 1976, in a quiet German town, 21-year-old Annalisa Michel lay writhing on the cold wooden floor of her bedroom. Her body, once full of life, was now frail and battered, her cheeks sunken, her lips cracked. Her parents wept nearby, powerless as their daughter let out a guttural, inhuman growl that echoed through the house. This was no ordinary illness. Something had taken hold of Annalisa, something that refused to let her go. It began years earlier. Dark shadows lurked at the edge of her vision, whispers taunted her from empty rooms, and unseen hands clawed at her skin in the dead of night. The devout Catholic girl claimed she was possessed by demons, but doctors diagnosed her with epilepsy and psychosis. Yet, no medication could silence the vile, otherworldly voices that tormented her. Desperate, her parents turned to 2 priests who agreed to perform an exorcism. Over 10 harrowing months, Annalisa endured 67 grueling exorcism sessions, each lasting for hours. Recordings captured her voice, twisted, guttural, speaking in multiple languages she had never learned. She claimed to be possessed by 6 demons: Lucifer, Judas, Nero, Cain, Hitler, and a disgraced priest named Fleischmann. The spirits mocked the priests, cursed in ancient tongues, and laughed as Annalisa's body convulsed violently. She refused to eat, believing the demons would not allow it. On July 1st, 1976, Annalisa Michel died of malnutrition and dehydration. Her final words: "Beg for absolution." Her parents and the two priests were charged with negligent homicide, leading to a trial that shook the world. Were they religious fanatics who let a mentally ill girl die, or had Annalise truly been consumed by something beyond human comprehension? Do you believe Annalisa was a victim of misdiagnosed illness, or did she fight a battle with real demons that ultimately claimed her soul? 3. The Black Monk of Pontefract, the UK's most violent poltergeist. In the quiet English town of Pontefract, a modest home on 30 East Drive became the site of one of the most chilling hauntings in history, a presence so dark, so violent, that even police officers fled in terror. It began in 1966, when the Pritchard family, Jean, Joe, their teenage son Philip, and their 12-year-old daughter Diane, moved into the house. At first, it was just minor disturbances, strange cold spots, flickering lights, and a fine white powder falling from nowhere. But then, the entity made its presence known. One evening, as Philip walked past the kitchen, all the cupboards burst open at once, slamming against the walls with a deafening force. Water pools appeared on the floor without any visible source. Objects began levitating, vanishing, or being hurled across the room. And then they saw him. A shadowy figure clad in a long, black monk's robe would appear at the foot of the stairs, its faceless head hidden beneath a deep hood. It stalked the family relentlessly, growing more aggressive with each encounter. Diane became the primary target of its wrath. It yanked her from her bed, dragged her screaming up the stairs, and even left red handprints on her throat as if she had been strangled by invisible hands. Terrified, the Pritchards called the police. Officers arrived, skeptical at first, until they saw a heavy oak sideboard slide across the room on its own. One officer, visibly shaken, admitted he had never seen anything like it. Investigators later uncovered that the house stood near the site of an ancient gallows, where a 16th-century monk had been executed for unspeakable crimes. Was it his vengeful spirit tormenting the family? The Pritchards eventually fled, but to this day, paranormal investigators report violent disturbances in the house. Doors slam, heavy footsteps echo, and the black monk still lingers on the staircase, waiting. Would you dare to spend a night inside the most haunted house in England, knowing the black monk may be watching, waiting for you? The Demon House of Gary, Indiana, a case so terrifying, even authorities fled. Some hauntings can be dismissed as superstition, but when police officers, social workers, and even a priest all witness the same terrifying events, disbelief becomes impossible. In 2011, LaToya Ammons and her 3 children moved into a small rental house in Gary, Indiana, never expecting it would become a gateway to something unspeakably evil. It began subtly, shadows lurking in the corners, phantom footsteps, and doors creaking open on their own. But soon, the disturbances escalated into pure horror. Swarming black flies appeared on the porch in the dead of winter, no matter how many times they were killed. Unseen forces yanked the children from their beds, leaving bruises and scratches. LaToya and her mother, Rosa, reported hearing low growls in the darkness, as if something inhuman was watching. And then, the children changed. One night, LaToya's 12-year-old daughter began speaking in a deep, unnatural voice, her eyes rolling back into her head. Her 7-year-old son was thrown across the room by an invisible force. But the most terrifying moment came at the hospital, when a nurse and social worker watched in horror as the boy walked backward up a wall, flipped over, and landed on his feet. Panicked, the family sought help from Father Michael Maginot, a local priest. He conducted an investigation and declared the house infested with demons. As he performed an exorcism, a deep, guttural voice filled the air, screaming, "You can't have them!" The police got involved, and even hardened officers admitted they saw shadowy figures moving through the house. Their radios malfunctioned, strange oily substances oozed from the walls, and something unseen left wet footprints across the floor. Terrified, the Ammons family fled. The house was later bought by paranormal investigator Zach Baggins, who documented its horrors in the film Demon House. However, after experiencing unexplainable health issues and disturbing visions, he demolished the house, fearing whatever lurked inside could never be contained. But the question remains, did destroying the house get rid of the evil, or did it simply set it free? If you lived in a house where something demonic lurked in the shadows, would you stay, or would you run? The Smurl family haunting, a poltergeist. So aggressive it terrified even the Warrens. Some hauntings are unsettling, others are terrifying. And then there are those so relentless, so malevolent, that they push the boundaries of human endurance. From 1974 to 1989, the Smurl family, Jack, Janet, and their 4 daughters, endured one of the most violent hauntings ever recorded in the quiet town of West Pittston, Pennsylvania. It began with small disturbances, foul smells, electrical malfunctions, and dark shadows creeping along the walls. But the entity in their home had far worse intentions. Loud, guttural growls echoed from the walls at night. Objects levitated and hurled across rooms with terrifying force. Deep scratches appeared on Jack's body, as if inflicted by unseen claws. But the true horror came when the entity physically attacked. Janet was violently grabbed and thrown. Jack was assaulted by a shadowy figure, and their daughters woke up screaming as unseen hands yanked their blankets away. The family sought help, but priests and investigators were left shaken by what they encountered. One priest attempted a blessing, only for the house to erupt with deafening bangs and an overwhelming stench of rotting flesh. The attacks only worsened. Desperate, they turned to Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famed demonologists behind cases like Amityville and Annabelle. The Warrens immediately felt the presence of something inhuman, a powerful, ancient demonic force that had latched onto the family. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, claimed she could see a monstrous, black mass moving through the house, feeding off their fear. The exorcism that followed was a battle for survival. As the Warrens performed the ritual, the house shook violently, growls reverberated through the walls, and Janet was lifted into the air before being thrown across the room. But even after the ritual, the entity refused to leave. It was only after years of spiritual intervention and relentless faith that the Smurls were finally freed. The house still stands today, and some claim the darkness never truly left. If you were trapped in a house where something unseen wanted to destroy you, how long would you last before running for your life? 6. The Bridgeport poltergeist, the haunting that stunned police and the nation. Some hauntings leave behind whispers, eerie chills, and fleeting shadows. Others, they force their way into reality, leaving even hardened skeptics shaken. In 1974, in a modest home at 966 Lindley Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut, the Gooden family found themselves at the center of one of the most documented poltergeist cases in history. A case so terrifying that police officers, firefighters, and city officials all became unwilling witnesses to the supernatural. It started with unsettling noises, faint scratching in the walls, distant whispers that had no source. But things quickly escalated. Furniture slid across the floor on its own, chairs flipped upside down, and the family's TV launched itself from the stand. The Goodens' 10-year-old adopted daughter, Marcia, seemed to be at the center of the disturbances. Wherever she went, chaos followed. Heavy dressers tipped over without effort, objects flew at her head, and at times she was lifted off the ground by unseen hands. In desperation, the Goodins called the police. What happened next sent chills through the entire department. Officers arrived expecting a hoax. Instead, they watched in horror as a refrigerator slid across the kitchen floor, a sofa levitated several inches, and a heavy wooden shelf ripped itself from the wall. Then came the voices, deep, guttural, and inhuman, emanating from thin air, taunting the officers. Word spread fast. Soon the house was surrounded by reporters, investigators, and even members of the clergy, all eager to witness the phenomenon. One firefighter, after seeing a recliner tip over with no one near it, fled the house and refused to return. Some claimed the activity was caused by Marcia, suggesting she was unconsciously manipulating objects through psychokinesis. But those who stood in that house, who felt the walls tremble and heard the disembodied voices, knew something far more sinister was at play. Eventually, the disturbances faded. Marcia was sent to live with relatives, and the Goodins moved away. But the chilling memories of what happened inside 966 Lindley Street remain. Even today, people report feeling uneasy near the property, as if something unseen, never truly left. If you saw furniture moving on its own and heard voices whispering your name, would you stay to investigate, or would you run? 7. The Tallman bunk bed haunting. The cursed furniture that terrorized a family. Some hauntings attach themselves to places. Others cling to objects, waiting for the right moment to unleash their terror. In 1987, in the quiet town of Horicon, Wisconsin, a simple piece of furniture, a second-hand bunk bed, became the source of one of the most chilling hauntings ever documented. The Tallman family had no idea that bringing home the bunk bed for their children would open the door to something dark, something inhuman. It started subtly. Doors creaked open on their own, radios changed stations without anyone touching them, and eerie shadows moved where no one should have been standing. But the true horror began when the children started seeing the thing. A tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes would emerge from the darkness. At first, it simply watched. But soon, it began to torment them, standing at the foot of their bed, whispering their names, and even lunging at them in the dead of night. Then the entity set its sights on the parents. One night, Alan Tallman came home late and saw something that made his blood run cold. A faceless entity emerged from the garage, its form shifting, its presence suffocating. The family priest was called in to bless the house, but whatever haunted them refused to leave. One of the most terrifying moments came when their son awoke screaming, claiming a voice had warned him. "You're going to die." That was enough. The Tallmans fled, leaving behind the bunk bed and whatever horror had come with it. Neighbors and police officers who entered the house after the Tallmans left reported strange noises, objects moving on their own, and an overwhelming sense of dread. The house sat abandoned for years, its past shrouded in fear and mystery. Eventually, the bunk bed was destroyed, and with it, the activity ceased. But some still whisper that the entity wasn't tied to the bed. It was only waiting for its next home. If you unknowingly brought a cursed object into your house, how long would it take for you to realize? Before it was too late. 8. The Silent Twins Case. A haunting packed beyond the grave. Some hauntings aren't caused by ghosts or demons. Sometimes the most chilling mysteries come from the human mind itself. In 1963, identical twins June and Jennifer Gibbons were born in Barbados but raised in Wales. From an early age, they were different. They refused to speak to anyone except each other, communicating in a secret language only they understood. Their silence was eerie, their bond unbreakable, as if they were controlled by an unseen force. Teachers, psychologists, and even their own family watched helplessly as the twins descended deeper into their private world. They would move in perfect synchronization, mirror each other's movements, and even breathe in unison. It was as if one mind controlled two bodies, but then their behavior turned dark. The twins began writing disturbing stories, tales of madness, possession, and death. Their obsession with violence escalated into real-life crimes, arson, vandalism, and theft, until they were caught and sent to the infamous Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital. That's when things got truly terrifying. Doctors noticed that Jennifer seemed weaker, her body deteriorating for no medical reason. Then, out of nowhere, the twins made a chilling pact. One of us must die so the other can live. Shortly after, in 1993, the sisters were being transferred to a lower security facility. But just as they arrived, Jennifer suddenly collapsed. Her pulse slowed, her body shut down, and within hours she was dead. Cause of death? A sudden, unexplained inflammation of the heart. No poison, no disease, no reason. June simply accepted it. She didn't cry, she didn't mourn. Instead, she whispered, "Now I am free." To this day, no one can explain how Jennifer died, or if her death was truly a supernatural sacrifice. June went on to live a quiet, normal life. But one question remains. Did she really survive? Or did she just become one with her twin? 9. The terrifying case of Doris Bither, the entity. Some hauntings leave behind whispers. Others leave behind scars. In 1974, a woman named Doris Bither claimed that something evil lurked inside her home in Culver City, California. It wasn't just a feeling or strange noises in the night. Doris reported being physically attacked by an unseen force. At first, no one believed her. But then, they saw it for themselves. Paranormal researchers, including Dr. Barry Taff, investigated Doris's claims and immediately sensed an unnatural energy in the house. The air felt thick, oppressive, like an invisible presence pressing down on their chests. Then one night, the impossible happened. Doris stood in her dimly lit bedroom, surrounded by researchers. They had cameras, instruments, ready to prove or disprove her story. But as they watched, orbs of light materialized before their eyes, swirling in the darkness like something alive. Then, a shadowy figure began to form, growing darker, more solid, until it loomed over Doris. The room exploded into chaos. Objects flew off shelves. A suffocating stench of decay filled the air. Doris screamed as an invisible force threw her across the room. She clutched at her arms, her face twisted in terror. And when the researchers reached her, they found fresh bruises already forming on her skin. There was no logical explanation, no trick of the light, no rational way to explain how an invisible force could physically harm someone. Doris eventually fled the house, but the entity followed her. No matter where she moved, the attacks continued. The haunting didn't end, it just went with her. Even after Doris passed away years later, her case remains one of the most terrifying and well-documented hauntings in history. The photos taken that night, still debated. The bruises? Undeniable. The truth? Still unknown. So, the question is, was Doris Bither haunted or hunted? The Vallecas case, Spain's most infamous haunting. Some hauntings are rumors, some are urban legends, but this one, it's on an official police report. In 1991, in the Vallecas district of Madrid, Spain, a family was terrorized by a force they couldn't see, but one they could feel. It all started with a spirit board seance, a desperate attempt by a teenage girl named Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro to contact a deceased loved one. But something else answered. According to witnesses, as Estefania held the planchette, the board began to tremble violently. A strange black mist rose from the board and rushed into her mouth. From that moment on, she was never the same. She began having terrifying hallucinations of shadowy figures lurking in her room, whispering to her in the dead of night. Her health spiraled downward, and doctors couldn't explain why. She suffered convulsions, terrifying visions, and fits of rage, as if she was being possessed. Then, 6 months later, she was dead. No medical explanation, no logical cause, just gone. But her death didn't end the nightmare. In fact, it made it worse. After her passing, her family reported horrifying paranormal activity. Unseen forces threw objects across the room, doors slammed shut on their own, and deep, guttural growls echoed through the apartment. The most terrifying of all, they saw a dark figure standing at the foot of their beds at night. The final straw came when Estefania's parents discovered their youngest son screaming in terror. A shadowy force was dragging him across the floor. That was when they called the police. When officers arrived, they expected to find a distressed family, maybe a break-in. What they found instead made history. Inside the house, the temperature dropped instantly. They witnessed doors slamming shut on their own, heard disembodied voices, and even saw a photograph of Estefania spontaneously burst into flames with no logical explanation. In a chilling twist, the police were so disturbed that they actually filed an official report confirming the unexplained phenomena they witnessed. To this day, the Vallecas case remains one of the only documented hauntings in history with a police report backing it up. So the question is, did Estefania open a doorway that could never be closed? Or did something follow her back from the seance and refuse to leave? You made it to the end. But are you truly alone? Many who hear these stories report strange happenings afterward. A sudden chill, the feeling of being watched, the unsettling sense that someone or something is just out of sight. Maybe it's just your imagination, maybe not. If you dared to watch until the end, let us know in the comments. Did anything strange happen while you were watching? Or perhaps something will happen later. Like, comment, and subscribe if you still have the courage. Sweet dreams.